to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. Today, Brad Leavitt of AFT Construction is back with us on the show. This is Brad's fourth time on the show, and every single time he brings a tremendous amount of value and advice for you regarding the design build process. This includes insights into the builder's perspective, the importance of having a design book, and how to align your design with the client's budget. Today, we're taking a new approach and diving into the reasons why clients might have resistance to the idea of bringing a designer into the building process. Brad is going to share with us ways that builders and designers can highlight their value and overcome that resistance, and ways that you can convey your value to the hesitant builders as well. One of the things that you need to consider when working in a design build is staying organized within the project, right? One of the best ways to do this is with our show sponsor, My Doma Studio. My Doma Studio is the place for you to manage all of your projects, from time tracking to communication to project approvals, so that you can free your time to focus on your business and serving your clients, okay? Design build is a complicated process, so why not alleviate some of the pressure by making sure everything is on track the right way? And guess what? My Doma Studio is bringing back their Black Friday deal, so don't miss out on this. From November 26th all the way to the 30th, you can get 25% off your annual subscription of My Doma Studio, which works out to be 4 entire months for free, okay? There's no bigger sale than this during the entire year. So please go over to mydomastudio.com/Black Friday to get in on this steal of a deal. Alrighty, now let's hear what Brad has to say about overcoming objections and proving your value in the design build process. Hi, Brad. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business again today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be back. Thanks for having me, Luann.
Well, I'm smiling ear to ear because I know the second that this show populates in the queue for all of my listeners, they're all going to start jumping around and doing the happy dance because they love you. We all love you here. You've been helping us so much. And when I think about, truthfully, every once in a while, Brad, I haven't even shared this with you, but every once in a while, I really do sit and contemplate how grateful I personally am to you, because you have this amazing, super big, super busy luxury design build or building company, AFT Construction. Then you have the podcast of your own. You have an Instagram following that is a beast there. And he takes his time out every month to come and talk with us. I mean, it's pretty remarkable, and I'm so grateful to you.
Well, I love it. And I'm a big believer in the collaboration too, as you know, Luann. I mean, that's part of marketing, and we could probably spend a whole nother episode of marketing, and maybe we do that at some point. But, that's part of branding, right? And it's building the community. And, I want to bring value to the construction community, to the design community, and I see it happening. So yeah. I'm all on board.
Well, you're a giver, and we love givers here because we love all the collaboration and all the love and all the going around in a kumbaya circle. So we're so grateful to have you in ours. So, okay. So today, Brad, we're going to talk today. We have had discussions on our previous episodes together about budget and about the importance of a design book, okay? And all of the things and the reasons why you in AFT Construction have made a decision that you will not build a home for any client that does not have an interior designer as part of the team. And so we've had these kind of conversations, but we still are both getting feedback from the designers listening that they're looking for some of the language, some of the more nitty gritty on when and how to speak to not only the consumer, but maybe the builder that doesn't understand why that value is important. And we decided today, in full disclosure, we decided that this is a particular conversation that is tough for me to really take as the voice of the designer 100%, because there's a lot of things on this podcast that I can empathize with the designer, with my experience with Window Works, just being a business person, and I can get to that good question that we want. But this is a little bit of, walking on ice for me, because I get the broad concepts, but I know and I recognize that designers might have more nitty gritty questions. So you and I came up with a little brainstorm, and we said, well, what if I just took it from the standpoint of that consumer? Well, I can do that. I can be the consumer. So we're going to kind of take it along this line, and I'm sure between yourself and myself, it's going to organically morph and develop. But the big thing is this is where we're going to start. I'm coming to you. I want to build a home, and I want you to be my builder, and I think I'm all who I think I am, and I don't want a designer. And you maybe have said to me once or twice, maybe you're not AFT, right? Because you're AFT, it's like that's the fine line. Maybe you're another builder who's like where you were several years ago. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And as a builder, you're thinking, this is so much better, but what are you saying to me? I'm going, no, it's fine. You and me, we got this. We're fine. I've built 2 other houses before, is what I'm going to say to you as a consumer. Silly, right?
Right. No, I love that you teed it up that way. And it's funny, if you're in my office, Luann, and you're my customer, which it's funny because I just had a customer in last week, and we're going to be building their custom home. And it was just like this, where, okay, Brad, I understand you've talked about a designer. I understand, I've heard that term, I may know someone that's used one, whether it be positive or negative, it's regardless. But, look, I have my budget. I would rather save on the design fee so I can spend it elsewhere or have it for the house or whatever story they come up with, which there's so many. And not to pick on clients because, they're like everyone. It's just we have to educate, our team. We have to educate the market, the industry, to confront these questions. And so I have a whole list of things I go through with them. And the first thing I help them understand from the very beginning is, okay, you have a concern that, let's just say arbitrarily for those listening, let's just say this designer's $10 a square foot. So on a 5,000 square foot house, their fee is going to be $50,000. And the homeowner's like, well, Brad, that's too much money. I don't think, I want to use that, for something else, as I mentioned. Well, for me, I sit down and I say, okay, let's walk you through this process. So our designer, they're actually going to save you money by still spending that $50,000. And they look at me like, how's that even possible? I'm spending $50,000. And what I explained to them, I say, let's just look at this globally. If it's just me and you trying to design this house, and I have a designer, or I'm saying if it's me and you trying to design this house, I'm going to say, okay, Luann, I need you to pick the tile. What tile do you want in your kitchen, for your backsplash? What do you want in your master shower? What do you want in your kids' bathroom? So there's a lot of time vested, and you're not going to know where to source all this product. You're not going to know where to go. So there's going to be time where I'm spending and you're spending to source it, which is first and foremost. But here's the kicker, because there's a lot of tile showrooms. There's a lot of kitchen and bath showrooms in every market, even in my market, that have design services. But what the customer doesn't understand, if I have a designer that we're paying a fee, and we've spoke about this at length in previous episodes, Luann, is that they're going to have a design book, which means I can competitively price this project. So I can send it out to 3 tile companies, and I could get the best price because we know exactly the termination points, and we spoke about this. We know the quantities. So I'm going to get the most competitive price on the market of someone that I feel is qualified. If I don't have a designer, I'm limited. I can't go to 3 tile companies and have them work with the client and come up with the design and pricing, because it's too much work for all of them. So I have to single in on and hone in on one contractor. So I have to pick one. They're going to do the design. So the client's not going to have it competitively bid. They're going to be paying a premium to work with this sole contractor, the sole subcontractor who's going to do the design. So even though they may not see it, they're still paying for it at that time.
So what if I said to you, because now I'm pretending that I'm the customer sitting there, and what I could imagine myself saying is, well, okay, I hear what you're saying. However, why do you need the exact layout and selection of the tile to go get that bid, Brad? Why can't we just decide that there's going to be, I understand I have to make certain decisions. Okay, I'm going to have a tile floor in the bathroom. Maybe I'm going to have a shower stall that's tiled. Maybe the rest of the room is going to have tile halfway up. So, Brad, why can't you just tell me what that labor would be? And when I get to the point where I'm going to pick the tile, I'll understand that the actual tile that I pick may have different price points. So how come we can't just do it like that, Brad?
Well, Luann, I want you to like me by the end of the project, right? And you're not going to like me if that's the case. And the reality is, I don't say this lightly, but you use the term save marriages one house at a time. I mean, you are successful for a reason, Luann. You and your husband or your spouse or significant other, you need to focus on what makes you successful. And you need to allow us as the professionals behind the scenes to pull this together. And that's the missing element is what and this goes back to something that I've said in the beginning as well, is that yes, there are homeowners that maybe have a good eye to design, or they have good taste, or they're familiar with building. They've been through this many times. But the reality is there's so much that goes into every build. There's so much detail and there's so much information. And so I'm very adamant that, Luann, I want you to like me by the end of this project. And the only reason that's going to happen is if we have a designer working with us to pick everything. And there's a few reasons why, and this is where we could get very specific. When they ask that question, it's really easy to say, well, I want this to be a happy marriage between us for 2 years. But outside of that, I want them to think and really pick their brain and say, okay, well, what you need to understand, there's a lot more than just picking a beautiful marble. There's a lot more than picking a big format porcelain, right? You need to be thinking about, how does this product perform, right? How is it to UV exposure? Is this an indoor outdoor product? Are you wanting to carry it through? Does it perform? How does it deal with kids? If you have kids, how is your day-to-day living? Are you entertaining? What's the maintenance? How often do I have to maintain this? If it's marble, do I have to seal it? If it's engineered quartz, is it going to be sustainable where I don't have much maintenance to it? And so the practicality, not just looking good, but the whole function of every product. So many designers really understand, not only is it going to look beautiful, but how the product will perform, which is super key. And most homeowners don't even think about that aspect.
Well, and I can hear that, but you're talking about $50,000. So say I buy this whole, I'm going to save money possibly on my tile selection by being able to have you bid it out to 3 people as opposed to being locked into one. And maybe I end up with a better selection because it has better suited to the uses of whether it's a laundry room or a master bath or a kid's bathroom. But that's one space. I mean, could this really be happening in enough spaces for me to justify $50,000, Brad?
That is a great question, Luann, and I'm glad you said that because, yes, I mean, we could go and itemize every single element of this custom home or this remodel and point out A, B, C, D of all these finishes. But what I want you to think about is no matter who you are, all of our clients have a budget, and they're always, it doesn't matter if you're 1 million or 10 million, 50,000 or 500,000. Everyone looks at this logically and says, what's my ROI? What's my return on investment? What's my resale? What's going to be my appraisal? So you start thinking about this. I can assure you, by having a good designer, by having a good builder, by understanding where to put the dollars, we all have a budget. So let's, a designer's really going to help us cater to, let's focus on the kitchen. Let's focus on the indoor outdoor living and the great room. Let's focus on the master bath. These are some components where we're really going to utilize that dollar. And having this professional designer on board will now, when you come to resell this, if it's in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, don't think about the 50 grand. We're going to be able to save that in expediting the build, in saving, in other components of the house. But in your resale, you're going to have something that's going to hit the mark. You're going to have something that speaks to people. When they walk, they're going to see and feel this house. So that value, if it's not today, it'll come at some point down the road.
Well, and you touched on something that I was about to ask you there, Mr. Brad Builder. I'm still with my consumer hat on now. So, all right. So here's the thing. If we want to say that scenario in the tile follows through in multiple places. It follows through with selecting my lighting. It follows through with selecting my hardwood floors. It follows through with figuring out my moldings and stuff. So it sounds like to me what you're saying is you don't want me to do all these selections with you. You want me to do them somewhere else with somebody else. And I can grant you that I can believe that there's an expertise that a designer has that might know more things about, like you said, performance and all of that. But I have to believe as a builder, you probably know that too. But let's just say I go down the road and believe all that. So are we saying that your bill to me is going to be less money because this process is so much better with the designer involved, and so I'm spending more on the designer, but am I saving any dollar bills when I come to you to build my house?
Absolutely. And I'm very adamant that if they were adamant to not have a designer, then I do increase that fee, which we mentioned. And so I have a very competitive fee in my market, and where I work. But I'm very open with my clients about that. Yes, if I don't have a designer, that's going to increase the burden on me. It's going to increase the staff on me. It's going to extend the general contracting fees. So my monthly fees are going to increase because it's going to take me longer to build. And we've talked about this. If I can decide this up front, I can build your home faster. So that's other value in carrying costs and construction loans and, all these little, ancillary costs that are out there that people just don't recognize because they can't quantitatively look at it and say they only see that $50,000 number to the designer.
Okay.
And so it's really important that we bring all this up. But this is where I'm putting a little pressure on my designers too, as we're kind of alluding to, Luann, is that it's really important, and they're phenomenal. I can say wholeheartedly, all the designers I work with, some here locally, some on a national level, do a phenomenal job. Like they're very educated. They understand the product and the market. And this is where, I put the ownership on them that they really do need to understand that if this is their kid's bathroom or their boy's bathroom, what kind of product are we putting around the water closet, right? And how are we using this? And the consumers are going to trust me when I'm telling them they're educated. They understand how to do the CAD drawings. They understand how to do the design book. They understand all these products that are in the market and bang for the buck and say, hey, we could pick this nice expensive tile for this laundry floor, but let's scale back and do this so that way we meet budget. And so that's where the designers also need to be very prepared in their understanding of the market and all of the different options that are out there for them.
Right. And so, again, if I'm continuing on the vein of having my consumer hat on and I'm kind of pressuring you in this meeting, the next thing that I would say to you is, we leave it with, okay, you're going to save me money on your bill because I hire a designer. So you say yes, you explain to me why. And then the next thing I would say to you is I would say, so how do I go about vetting a designer that's able to work at the level that you expect them to work at so that they're worth my $50,000 and they in turn do save you time and money so that your bill to me reflects that? What is the criteria that I want to look for in a designer? Do you have questions for me, Brad, that you can give me a little education on as I go and interview these designers? Because I don't want to spend $50,000 and it's still not an organized, wonderful process between us.
And that is one of the best questions you've asked, Luann. And this is where there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of networking. There's a lot of community that has to take place leading up to this, right? And experience. I mean, the reality is, today when I'm sitting in front of the client and this question's asked, I'm a lot more experienced and knowledgeable today than I was 8 years ago. That's just reality. But what's really important is that having a large database now of projects that I've done, having a large database of designers I've worked with, I understand their capability, their communication, their organization, their timeliness, their ability to be organized, and then their design books. And so it's easy for me where I have, 15, 16 designers that are in that pool that I can recommend. And where that's really important is, to your point, what's really important for me as the builder is that I do have clients that, if I throw out some numbers, let's say we have a client at $200 a square foot or $400 a foot or $600 a foot. That's going to allow a different variation as far as the level of expectation, the level of product, the level of quality. And that also means that they have maybe some more margin in their budget. Some designers maybe in my market, I'm just speaking numbers in my market, maybe $5 to $7 a square foot, some maybe 10, and some are like 15 to 18. Well, typically, in those three tiers, there's levels of qualifications, background, education, staffing. There's so many variables. And so I sit there with the client and I try to get a good grasp of their budget, of their expectation, of their vision, of their style. And then I can align them with people that I know can be at that budget, be at that and hit the mark on what they're expecting. And so that's where I have to do a really good job vetting if I'm the first one in on the front end.
Okay. So now Luann is talking instead of Luann Consumer. Now, so thinking about that, you mentioned specifically that you are aware that some designers are in that $5 to $7 a square foot range, the $10 and the $15 per square foot range. So that's their fee based on the square footage of the house. But then you also mentioned that their square foot ranges for the build of the house, $200, $300, $500 a square foot. And my question for you is twofold. Number one, let's take the price to build per square foot, 2, 3, 500. Is it important in your mind for a designer to be able to understand I don't want to say off the top of their head, because I mean ultimately off the top of their head. Like in window treatments, we call it ballparking a window treatment. If I walk into your house and you say to me, how much do window treatments cost? I can tell you, look at a window. I can say the wood blind is this, a silhouette is this, a drape is this, a motorized Roman shade is this. Like I can best guess it within probably a 5 to 10% margin. Easy. You know what I'm saying? And so do you think that skill set is important? That comes with experience. It comes with doing it over and over again. Do you think that same skill set is important for a designer to know, that if they're looking at a $200 or $300 or $500 budget based on the items and the conversation a client is having, or it's only important for the builder to know it?
Oh, that's so important for the designer. And this is where the designer, whether they have, this ton of experience doing it, it doesn't matter. They can ask the questions. They could ask their builder, how much did we spend on this remodel? How much did you spend on this custom home? They could even, as they're working with their builders of choice, what is this price per square foot? Because if they have a good pulse, and I could tell you that most of the designers I work with, I would say nearly all of them, really understand. They could look at something and tell you what the price per square foot is, at least reasonably similar to you. They could be within 15, 20%. They kind of know what the market's doing. So they have a good pulse for that, which is really important, because that'll allow them, to really be more competitive too with their own fee. They can understand what they're charging per square foot and if it's in line with what the customer expectation is. Because yes, if you have a customer that's at $200 a foot, they're probably not going to be paying $15 a square foot for a really high-end designer that's really well known, right? And so these designers at that $15 square foot mark, they really know their demo. They understand the house minimum. And they have a good pulse of what the cabinetry budget needs to be. They may see, Brad, the cabinetry budget needs to be 10% of the overall value of the house, right? And they may know some of these key numbers that they need to design to the, to that level.
Okay. So I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but when I think about, no, if you tell me that it's important as a designer to at least be able to have this conversation on the fly. This is a 200 to 300 to 500 square foot home within reason to get it accurate, right? And then I think, okay, if I've got to do that, how am I going to learn that? And your advice is well said, to just ask the builders that you're working with, hey, share with me a little education if you would, so that I can better bring the right client to you, blah, blah, blah. But here's the wonder, is this a dumb question? Is it make sense to do things like you look through your real estate section of the newspaper and you see open houses on new builds, and maybe it's a tract home or maybe it's a single off home or whatever, and you see that it says it's $1.4 million, and then you go and you tour the house and you take note of the appliances, you take note of the level of the millwork, you take note of the stone and the different finishes, and you just gather this mental data and make these notes and then say, okay, this is a 2,800 square foot divided by the selling price. That's what this is. Or that's a retail, you know what I'm saying? Is that a dumb question or is that a legit question?
No, that's a legit question. And
Okay.
honestly, Luann, and that's really important because although that may factor in the cost of the land, it's good to have
Mm,
a good idea of what things are selling for because this goes
right.
back to the question of saying, I'm confident that right now this neighbor's house sold for 600 a foot. Well, if your budget's 400 a foot, we could do this amazing design. You pay my design fee, and then at the end of the day, you could sell this house for 600 a foot, and you're only paying 400. So the advantage of the builder side is now you know what the actual build cost is, and the selling side is what it can sell for. So that helps in that strategy of the justification of the design fee, right? Because a good designer, that home's going to sell better. It's just reality. But going back to that, Luann, Zillow and open houses and spec builders that are selling these homes. This is really important because one thing, and not to get off topic, but a lot of customers will say one of the other things, if you're the customer lend, you may say, well, my friend had a designer, but the budget was out of control because they designed something that was way over the top. And this is true for both architects and designers that they need to have a good pulse for the budget, even if they don't do the day-to-day pricing as we do as the builders. But if a client's coming in and saying, I want all my walls wrapped in marble, right? I want the whole exterior of the house wrapped in stone, and I want wood shake roofing and I want this extravagant pool. I mean, they have to have a good pulse to say, okay, well, if you want to be at the 300 a foot, this is designing way overboard. If Brad says, hey, I have, 150,000 for cabinetry, and I have custom millwork on every wall of the home and custom built-ins and bookcases and entertainment centers. Well, we already know what the cost is going to be to do the kitchen and the bathroom vanities. So the more millwork we're adding, the more custom cabinetry, that number is going to, go way overboard. And that's where it's really important too that the designers have at least a good understanding to say, hey, we need to keep the consumer under control because they have a huge wish list, but they have budget realistic expectations that we have to meet.
Mm. I can see how that's important. And I also can see the flaw in my question in it, including the land. See, that's where you don't think about what you don't know, right? And
Oh,
so,
that's totally fine.
yeah, no, 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 no. So the thing is, and I can also see what your last point there was in if we're just designing this amazing vision that our client is describing, but we don't have a sense on what the ultimate kitchen is going to cost and what this layer of millwork is adding to the project. And this is how we can all of a sudden do all of this work, all of this legwork, and then have the client go, oh, it's going to cost that. No, I can't afford that, or I'm not willing to invest that. And then you have to kind of go backwards and start over again. So I get that again, it comes with experience, and I understand asking colleagues and builders, but that seems like a slow curve, Brad. Where else does a designer who maybe has not yet the opportunity to do a design build project or has done one or two, maybe for a very close referral type client, but to really start to call out in marketing and advertising that they're a designer that specializes in builds, where do you get that? How much does it really cost to do it? Do you just have to keep building like fake houses? Not that, and I don't mean that like not that you shouldn't do it. Like, do you just let me build this kitchen and see what it prices out? Like, how do you do it?
That is a great question. So the one advantage we have today, and this is why I am a big believer in social media marketing and our collaboration and everything else, because what it does, it opens doors of communication, right? And so what I've found, there's a lot of designers that have reached out to me over the years, and I've reached out to other designers, other builders to get a good pulse of what they're spending and charging. And, because I want to understand my pricing in my market, am I competitive? What are we seeing? So I network with other builders, I network with other designers, because sometimes the builders won't say, hey, Brad, I'm building this house next to you for 500 a foot, but I could ask the designer and they may tell me, right? But, and so at least I have a good idea of what the market is doing. And then I have a good pulse of what market conditions lumber is throughout the country. And that's really important as I network with other builders. And so what I'm getting at is, yes, designers, working with all their builders in their network, they can give as much information from a remodel to a new build. That's great. If they can network with other open houses and brokers and realtors in their area to really understand the market and what's selling and what, people are charging and moving into, and they could look this up on county records, on county websites, and then do their own research with the photos on the MLS. I mean, all this stuff's out there now with technology, but even more so, they could reach out to some trusted collaboration vendors they have, or contacts on social media. They have, builders that they follow, maybe in other markets or non-competitors, and say, hey, send a picture. What do you think this would be for square foot? What do you think this house? Because most builders can give them an idea, so they could quickly just ask. And most people will answer on social media, and that's one of the benefits.
Wow. Well, I think you might have just stepped into it there.
Well, and not that they all have to reach out to me, but I would say in the market, right?
Please don't.
Well, more than anything, it's just there are a lot of, they can meet with a lot of builders. And right now, I know with COVID, we don't have as many of the builder shows, and we don't have a lot of the, kitchen and bath and some of these events. But when those events do happen or take place, meet some people there, talk to them. And most people are pretty open to share some of that info, because look, if I tell designers a square foot price, it doesn't really affect my business, right? And it helps them build theirs. So that's where it can be real valuable.
And I can see that as you were talking, I actually wrote down, go back to networking with builders, because, it's one thing to ask a builder that you come across on a job site or through actual collaboration, a work collaboration, but to get multiple answers and multiple opinions, you need to go, where are all the builders? And we've said it before, is to join the organizations that the builders are part of. And then there is no worry of, why am I sharing this information, right? It's not like, what's your ulterior motive? It's, whatever it is. And I have to say, this is a great place for me to just mention and plug what's coming up next year. Last year, everyone listening knows that I did the keynote speech for the Powerhouse Smarts Luxury Conference, which I was so impressed with this conference, because it was when they invited me to speak, it was the first time I ever heard of it, and I looked into it. And Wendy Cohen is the owner and the founder and the organizer of it, and she's an amazing lady. But this conference is builders, designers, realtors, and developers. I mean, it is your perfect mix of every type of colleague, that their information informs your information so you can do a better job. And the big announcement is that this year, Brad and I are both going to be there together, and we're going to do a panel talking about the same types of things that we're talking about right now, about this designer-builder relationship and how to strengthen it and how to understand what each of you go through and how to be a better team member to each other. And we're going to invite a couple of designers and another builder to join us. So I'm very excited that you and I are going to do that together in March. And that's going to be a virtual conference this year. And that's why we're able to, spread our wings and have people from all over be part of it. So looking forward to that with you, Brad.
Yeah, same here. I can't wait. And, it's too bad it's not in person,
I know.
And it's crazy that it's next March. We have to do it online already, but, we'll make the best of it for sure.
Yes, but this is exactly where you network. And I really encourage everybody I'll put the link in the show notes I actually think the registration is open already. I'll put the link in the show notes how to do it, because I'm sure, just like anybody running a conference now, they're going to be looking for ways to encourage networking, even though it's virtual. And this is the goal. Is going and meeting a builder in an environment like this, where you can just have an open conversation and ask all the questions that you wish you could ask of a builder. And of course, the builders need to know, your information and your goodness and your expertise as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's super important. And it's all that reciprocity. I mean, I think there's a lot of value designers can bring to builders and vice versa. And, the more relationships, and that's, not to put too big of a plug here, but, that's where I've seen a lot of success just from social media, just the back end side of it, where you build those relationships and these networks, and, you can ask questions, you can ask, and share insights and information. And it's really valuable, because I feel like we've expedited our growth as a builder and become a better builder because of the networking we've done on Instagram and some of these other platforms.
Well, and that leads me right into it because I didn't mention, and I should, because Claire Stasak is a beloved podcast guest here. She's been on the show a couple of times, and she's an amazing marketer and has really built out her interior design firm through Instagram. And you're going to be on a panel with Claire talking about social media and marketing because, of course, your marketing is through the roof as well. So you're going to be there on two different panels. So that's exciting.
Yeah, very excited about that.
Yes, yes. And, I have to just take this moment, too, to shout out to Claire because Claire is the one who suggested me last year to Wendy and her team. And she also suggested you to Wendy and her team. So Claire's a great collaborator, right?
Well, it's funny because, I know the topic of this conversation for everyone listening, is to provide some valuable information on the importance of a designer on the project. But just as you think about just the value for anyone listening that's maybe not spending the time that they probably could, because of social media, I was a guest on your podcast. I think the first time Claire reached out to me, she's in Chicago. She asked to be on my podcast. She was on, and then the collaborations continue with you and I, and now we're both speaking at this panel, next fall. And so you just see how the ripple effect, right? These little things happen. This would have never happened 10 years ago where you're in New Jersey, she's in Chicago, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, right?
Right.
And how quickly, we've built these relationships and collaboration, and that can happen so fast through social media. And that's where, if you're not using it, even if you're just getting on and posting about your business, that's great. But actually use it a step further to not only brand your business, but also brand yourself. It's that personal branding is permanent job security, right? And then figure out how to network and utilize those relationships that are very important.
Right. It's so true. And it's fun. It's just fun, right? Anyway, all right. So now getting back to our dilemma here. So I think another thing that occurs to me that would be a stumbling block in this process, Brad, is so often the builder doesn't understand the value, and the builder is perfectly happy to go running along the project with a consumer like I was pretending to be, not understanding the value of the designer and not needing the designer involved. And so we need a little bit of, I think the language that you used to describe to the consumer made a lot of sense. It's the same language theoretically that would go to the builder as well, but take yourself, Brad, to talking to, and I know that you do talk to them, that local guy, the guy, you know what I mean? And he's just going to build a house for you and everybody get out of my hair, right? Right. Yep. And he's kind of cowboy about it. And he doesn't think he needs a designer involved and, blah, blah, blah. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I have to say I have, two chairman of the board clients, and their both specialty is design build. And one of them has had they both have great long relationships with the build firms that they go with. But the one builder of one referred my designer client, to another builder. And then he didn't want to do any of the things that were the valuable things that she's on the project for. And we had multiple conversations of just reframing it, saying, no, this is what the role is. This is what it's here for. And ultimately, it was sort of, we just came up with, you know what? We don't need to work with this builder. You know what it's like to work with a builder who understands your value. Just tell them no, right? So tell us a little bit about when we're really trying to have that builder that doesn't know yet how amazing his or her life could be if they had a designer involved.
Well, and this is one of the most difficult questions, and I love that you asked that, because one of the tough things, and we've spoken about this, where I get really frustrated, is this old school mentality. I just want to beat my head against the wall when I'm talking to some of these contractors sometimes. But I'll give a good experience. There was a builder, and he's near retirement age, and he and I were at a networking event with one of the vendors here in town, and this is about a year and a half ago. And we're sitting there at dinner, just kind of chatting across the table about the industry and career and so forth. And one of the comments he made, he said, I haven't worked with a lot of designers, and we're talking about design and, how we run our business. And he said, I've enjoyed the process where I go with my client and I go to the plumbing showroom and we sit there for 3 hours and we pick the plumbing fixtures. And then, another day I'll go to appliances and sit there for 3 hours. And he said, but I wasn't really efficient. And it struck a chord with him, because I'm like, why are you at those meetings? Like, this is where you could, as a builder, you could be focused on, your business. You could be focusing on other aspects to be, a better builder. And so you have a designer that's an expert, that's way more of an expert than you are with plumbing fixtures anyways, and that understands not only, how they're going to perform, but how they're going to look. And that's not your talent as the builder. You understand the sticks and bricks element to it. And it struck a chord because that's where I think a lot of builders don't understand the value that the designers bring in, where the designers can say, look, I'm not here to replace you. I'm not here to, you know, rain on your parade, but I'm here to assist you. I'm here to bring value. I can fill in the gaps where now you can focus on certain things, I can focus on things, and together we collaborate. And so you focus on the value, and then I think even more so, and this is really the key, is you have to find a builder that at least has some pulse or some vision of marketing. And some builders don't, but I would say even some of the really old school guys that I network with, they still understand the value of print media, even if they're not technologically savvy and they're not on social media, but they still want pretty pictures that they can put in Architectural Digest or Lux Magazine, right? Or House Beautiful. So that's where it's like, okay, if you want these projects that you can continually submit every year to these national publications, then you need me on board. And so helping them understand the marketing value, the time value, the resource value, I think these are ways to bridge that gap. And at the end of the day, I would say most builders hopefully, understand that. But there may be some that just, whether it be pride or whether, they're just dinosaurs, like they just do what they do. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny because I remember you did bring that up in one of the other episodes, but is to put that, really have them visualize that absolute benefit of coming away with the professional photographs, that it's not going to happen without the designer involved. And so, to your point, the builders that are a little bit more forward thinking, even if they haven't come completely around to the benefits from a cost standpoint to them, time and money, of having a designer involved, but if they have any kind of forward thinking in marketing, that's a big plus. I know we go through that with Window Works all the time, is because when we do a project for a designer, then yes, that's going to be a photographable project. Whereas that's 100% of the time, it's going to be a photographable project, whether the designer photographs it and then shares with us, or we split the photography with the designer, whatever the thing is, 100% of the time, it's going to be worthy of Instagram, like the tagline, IG worthy, right? But 50% of the times, maybe sometimes less, when we do it direct to the consumer, it's our window treatment is always IG worthy, but the rest of the room, just not always so much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And the reality is, and I know we said this before, but most of these publications, they will not publish you unless you have a designer. They will not do it. They want to make sure that you have an architect, designer, builder, and that's a requirement, or they won't even accept your application. And so that's just one small arm of what the designer can do to say, hey, look, maybe you are comfortable. Maybe you are comfortable where you're at and you've had a successful business, but the competition's out there. The recession will come. Why not be prepared for that? Why not look ahead? Why not look at your competitors that are on social media? Most consumers now, 90% of people have a smartphone. They're engaging. They're on their smartphone doing their research on companies. Like, if you're not on those platforms, if you're not, there's a whole demographic, a wave coming up through the industry that we're going to miss on. And these people that are just reluctant to change, reluctant to having a designer, they're going to miss the boat, because this new audience, they're seeing that, right? And House and Instagram and Pinterest have really captured the eye candy of architecture and design. And you have to be on board as a builder and designer. It's so important.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. Before I let you go, there is one thing I did want to go back to. We talked about it, you mentioned that some designers might be $5 to $7 a square foot, might be $10 a square foot, might be $15 a square foot. And I do know that often I've seen, and in the masterminds that I coach and in the Facebooks groups that I watch and part of, designers, before they get their feet wet, and we're not talking about that seasoned or that C level designer that really has got a lot of experience under the belt, but they are saying, how do I just price a whole build project when I don't have any idea. Will I spend 10 hours? Will I spend 40 hours? And so you're mentioning this per square foot price. And it's clear to me that you don't charge 15 a square foot if you're brand new. It's clear to me. But
Right.
how do you have any, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but do you have any experience on helping a designer just flesh out for themselves, can I charge 10 or do I have to stay at 5? Like, is there criteria that do you see? This is maybe a better way to ask it. Do you see the deliverable difference in a $5, a $10, and I know you see it in a $15 a square foot designer, but what maybe is some of those tangible deliverable differences? If you're not able to do the XYZ yet, then probably don't price at 10. Something like that?
Well, that's a good question. And so there's a few parts of that question, Luann, that we'll touch on. And so when you're thinking about a new designer, and when I use square foot, of course, we're kind of speaking about my projects. And so I would say on a custom home, when people are doing a brand new build custom home, most customers prefer a square foot price because it's tangible. There's a good number there. They prefer not to have hourly because it's so open-ended and you really don't know on that level of a home. Now, if you're doing 2 bedroom or like 2 rooms of a house, if you're doing a remodel, that's where hourly can be really important, to be cost effective for the client, so I guess just to set the stage. So if we're thinking just custom home, new build, ground up, here's our square foot price, that's where it's really important to have a square foot price. Now, with that said, from a designer, it's really hard for them to really understand the amount of time and effort and work and hours they're going to put into it. So it's really important for them to at least network with other designers to understand. Don't make all the mistakes yourself. Learn from mistakes other designers have made. And I'm sure a lot of designers listening can shake their head that they may have clauses in their contract that say, look, I'm going to design your house, at $5 a square foot, and I will allow X amount of changes or X amount of hours of changes. Because if I design your house because you want matte black fixtures everywhere, plumbing and lighting, then you come to me after I finish the design and you're like, I'm really liking this brass. I want to go back to brass. Well, you can't just swap out the lighting. Now you're changing the countertops and the cabinetry. And so it's a cause and effect. And that's where a designer can really lose a lot of money and time and frustration because the designers or the clients are so wish-washy. And so they're going to learn how to strategize and say, look, here's my set fee. But if you keep making changes, if I'm sourcing your rugs, and I've sent you 5 rugs and you keep changing them all the time, well, at some point, I'm going to have to start charging you above and beyond, and there has to be clauses. So that's at least helps protect them, just the global, unknown of doing a square foot. But I would say, when you're a young designer, yes, there's going to be someone investing in you. You may not be charging the $15 a square foot, but you may not have the qualification to that. They're going to pay you. You need to educate yourself. There's some time that you need to put into your self-education. No one get rich overnight. I didn't make any money in the first 4 years of business. It takes time to start building that Rolodex and credibility till you get to a point where you are worth the price someone's going to pay you. And there are levels, as we mentioned, whether you're having Pinterest boards and inspiration to a design book that's like fully CAD the whole way through, where you're almost a right arm of the architect. And so hopefully I answered some of that, with all these different aspects to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It comes down to what you have been saying over and over again is you have to educate yourself. You have to educate yourself on your market, on what's going on in the area that you live, what the going rates are for not only what the builders are charging, but what area designers are charging, and that especially if you have less experience and you are going to give a flat rate, that your contract is solid for the revisions and stuff, and that you are able to, I guess, do change orders and add hourly for things like that would come up, right?
Yeah, and one thing you touched on that I do want to speak about, because you hit something like just perfectly, Luann. You said understand, the designers in their area, because if they understand what their competitors are charging, they may look at this and say, hey, I'm more qualified, or I have a better design book or better program, so I can raise my fee. Or maybe I'm not at their level, so maybe I'm doing okay, or maybe I need to lower my fee to be more competitive. Or maybe someone has a leg up because have a good following on social media, and so that's why they're getting a lot of work. And so really understand what your market's charging for your level of qualification, and that'll help guide, their their pricing modules.
Yeah, we always have to do our due diligence in looking around at who's doing what we're doing in our same pond, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I have to do it all the time. I'm
Yeah.
always price checked all the time, right? So
Yes, yes, and the thing is, it's not, and to your point, it's not just see what they're charging; it's see what they're delivering and seeing what their expertise is, and then looking truly squarely in the mirror and saying, "I'm doing this as good or better," and hey, I can afford to raise my rates apparently, or I've got a little ways to go. I'm valuable. I'm valid what I'm doing. But yes, it makes sense that I'm not charging what that firm is charging yet, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, Brad Leavitt, you are just amazing. We just love having you on this show.
Well, thank you. It's fun.
Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
Every single time I have Brad on the show, I think to myself how lucky we are to have him come and spend his time with us and share his knowledge and his insights. And of course, it's all because of my friend Jenny Slingerland of Black Ink Interiors. I should say our friend, Jenny Slingerland, right? Jenny is the one, if you remember, who introduced me to Brad after she had worked with him on a couple of design build projects. And Jenny has now become our resident designer expert on the design build process. She teaches the course in Luann University, Design Build for Profit. And in this course, she breaks down the process and shows you how to become the go-to designer that builders are dying to work with. All right. We'll be bringing that back soon. And if you want to know when we open registration, go ahead and go to designbuildforprofit.com. All right. Now, I love this conversation with Brad because we really got into the nitty gritty of how you express your value to, as a designer, to builders and clients, right? Because we know that having you involved is going to save the client and the builder time and money. It's going to make that whole process more smooth, and it's going to, at the end, create a better result. But Brad points out that everyone has a budget, and that can range greatly. So he says everyone really, at the end of the day, wants to just know what's the ROI. So as a builder or designer, if you are encountering resistance, okay, then that means that the client isn't really understanding what that value is. Okay, so there are all kinds of conversations you have to overcome in this hurdle. And Brad says, come right out and be upfront. You're not there to replace the builder. You're not there as an obstacle to them. You're there to bring the value, marketing value, time value, resource value. And if the builder or the client are even a slight bit forward thinking, then they're going to understand that when they work with you, they're creating professional, photo-worthy projects. That's great for the builder. I mean, the client, I'm sure, like that too. But it's just that whole thinking ahead, thinking about everything. That's your job as a designer. You know that. You're the one that ties everything together while the builder's busy doing what he or she needs to do. You're thinking of the big picture, and that's what you have to convey to your clients, okay? So now some of you are experienced at this and some are newer, trying to land your first build project or, being a little bit shy about going after it. Okay, so in charging, that's always the big, scary spot too. And I thought that Brad's advice about the 3 tiers of charging was interesting. Charge by the square foot, either in the $5 to $7 range, and then the $10 range and the $15 range, and work your way up. Okay, so he says you're probably not going to step in and charge that $15 a square foot on your first design build project, right? But the more experience you get, the greater your reputation, the stronger you get in the process, the more you can raise your rates and get up to that top tier. It's about delivering the value. And of course, these are ranges. Your particular area might be different. What you've been doing might be different. You want to take all the information, not just for this episode, but the podcast, and still put it through your own filter and your own experience and what's happening where you are, right? So, the other thing is that one of the big takeaways from this episode is that when you are a designer and you are embarking on that build project, you have to understand that big picture, right? That market value of what things are selling for, the overall cost of the build project, okay? You should be able to step in on a project and ballpark what the build is going to cost. This shows that you have that level of experience and expertise. And, even if you don't yet, we talked about it. You can go and have conversations and learn and just try to educate yourself so that you really are talking from a point of validity, right? Of credibility. All right. So much here in this episode. And again, like I said, I'm so grateful to Brad. And if you have not heard his other episodes, please go back. You have episode 542, 560, and 580. All right. Okie doke. Now, I hope you are coming to the book launch. All right. I hope you are. So December 10th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. All right. Don't miss it. We're just going to have a good time. Bring your cocktail or your mocktail, bring your coffee, bring your wine, if you're Darla, you're going to bring your whiskey, right? So just join us. It's going to be fun. I want you to have an opportunity to just get to know my co-authors the way I do, the reasons why I selected them to be part of this next book, and so that you can understand what motivates them and learn a little bit about their chapter. And of course, we're going to have some prizes and some giveaways for Luann Live, which is coming in February. All right. So just go to luannniagara.com/launch. All right. To get on that list. All right. One more thing. I just want to say thank you to our sponsor, Cravat. All right. Cravat is a reliable trade partner when you are sourcing fabric, wallpaper, trim, rugs, furniture, and of course, the entire collection at the curated Cravat.com site. Okay. There you also have lighting and accessories. If you have not opened your trade account yet with Cravat, it is easy peasy. Just go to Cravat.com. That's it. That's all you have to do is go to Cravat.com, put your information in, and voila, you have an account at Cravat. All right? No minimums, no minimum buys, no yearly minimum buys. You just get to be a part of the Cravat family there. All right? So one last thing. I do want to tell you this too. Brad and I are going to be on a panel together at the virtual Powerhouse Smart Luxury Home Conference in March. You remember that I keynoted at this last year in real life, in person in March. And this year, they have invited me back, and I'm going to lead a panel discussion about the design build process. Okay. And Brad is going to be on it, and Jenny is going to be on it, and Kat Anderson is going to be on it. And we are going to pick it apart on how you really can get into the nitty-gritty, create a better process so that you can attract better projects. All right. So please go to powerhousesmart.com and register for that event. All right. That's it. Lots of information, every show, so many things to tell you about, right? Pick and choose what works for you. That's that's the bottom line. Pick and choose what works for you. But don't not choose to come to the book launch. I'm just saying it's a free event. It's a party. I want to see you there. It would be so much fun. All right. luannniagara.com/launch. Okay. That's it. We're done. Go out and have a great day and decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannniagara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.